Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before starting the video, please subscribe and keep watching for more details videos. Coco Gauff suggests how she'll feel if she ever has to play a competitive match against Venus Williams again. Coco Gauff will hope to cause waves at the US Open, but will first flick her attention to the Cincinnati Masters as her final warm-up event. Gauff stunned Aryna Sabalenka at the French Open back in June, but succumbed to a first-round exit at Wimbledon in the next Grand Slam. Lindsay Davenport shared how Gauff might prepare for Cincinnati after her shock exit to eventual winner Victoria Mboko at the Canadian Open. Gauff defended Mboko after losing to her, and now she's been discussing another player who is at the other end of her career completely. Coco Gauff shares how she will feel playing Venus Williams again. For Williams, there was no fairy tale at the Cincinnati Masters as she lost in the first round to Spanish performer Jessica Buzas Monero in straight sets. Before that match, Gauff was quizzed on the legendary player and asked how she might feel if she had to come up against the star she famously dumped out of Wimbledon in 2019. Gauff will perhaps look to use Sabalenka as an inspiration as she aims to become more consistent with reaching the latter stages of big events, and it appears she'd have no qualms with playing Venus again anytime soon. She said in her press conference, "It feels surreal from the standpoint of how amazing she is. When I played her at Wimbledon, I honestly did not think that I would still see her on tour at 21, just from an honest standpoint. I remember treasuring that moment at Wimbledon and having to draw her at the Australian Open. I was like, okay, this will probably be one of the last few times. Now that she is playing on tour and also playing great, there is definitely a higher chance that we will play each other again, and I look forward to it. Because any time you can step on court with a legend is special, regardless of the result. It's something that I can tell my kids and everything like that. Honestly, for people who don't watch tennis, maybe before the US Open, or honestly, the referee incident, people knew me most by that. They were like, 'You are the little girl who beat V.' I was like, yes. So that for me, out of the accomplishments of my career, is probably always going to be top 3. Gauff will eye a third major at the US Open. The talented youngster has accomplished so much in the world of tennis already, and as a result, all eyes will be on her at Flushing Meadows in a few weeks. First, she needs to prepare properly and try to go as deep as possible when her participation in the Cincinnati Masters gets underway. Gauff has beaten Williams twice, once at Wimbledon and once at the Australian Open, with every focus likely to be centered on Gauff, should the pair ever meet again. Gauff has to correct her double fault habit, but remarkably, she's still so young, and for her, everything will undoubtedly click into place at some point, and she can start winning a number of big titles for her ever-growing collection. Gauff's win over Venus will never be forgotten after it sent shockwaves across the world of tennis, but thankfully, she has other accolades she can look back on now and hasn't been proving to be a one-hit wonder. The crowd was hushed, expectant, the kind of silence that buzzed with electricity, the kind that wrapped itself around a tennis court like a second skin. Coco Gauff stood at the baseline, bouncing the ball with a focus honed through hours of relentless training. Across the net stood a living legend, Venus Williams. Again, but this wasn't 2019 anymore. This wasn't a teenager trying to prove herself on the lush grass of Wimbledon. This was a mature, Grand Slam winning Coco Gauff, standing opposite the woman who unknowingly helped shape her path. In a pre-match interview, just days before this hypothetical rematch, Coco had been asked a question that had followed her for years. How would you feel playing Venus Williams again, now that you're no longer the newcomer? She paused thoughtfully. There was no automatic media-polished response this time. Instead, Coco leaned into honesty. Her eyes softened, and a smile tugged at her lips. Like facing my origin story. Honestly, she said, voice steady, it would feel like playing against my origin story. Not just in tennis, but in belief. The room stilled. When I played her at Wimbledon in 2019, I wasn't just a qualifier. I was a dreamer. I was the girl watching Venus and Serena on YouTube, mimicking their serves in my backyard. I was pretending to lift trophies before I could even lift a proper racket. She paused again. So if I had to face Venus now, it wouldn't just be a match. It would be a full-circle moment, like walking into a memory, but this time, with everything I've learned since. 2019, the match that made headlines. It had been one of the defining moments of modern tennis. A 15-year-old girl, wide-eyed but focused, stepping onto Wimbledon center court and defeating Venus Williams in straight sets. Back then, Coco had wept during the post-match interview, not out of arrogance, but out of awe. "I wouldn't be here if it weren't for her," she had said, her voice cracking with sincerity. Venus, ever the graceful titan, had smiled with something between pride and passing the torch melancholy. "She played amazing," Venus had said. "The future is bright for her." And oh, how right she had been. Growth beyond the scoreboard. Since then, Coco Gauff had become more than just a player. She was an advocate, a role model, and a phenomenon. She had raised her voice for justice, challenged expectations, and lifted a Grand Slam trophy of her own, U.S. Open 2023, a triumph that had shaken Arthur Ashe Stadium to its core. Still, Venus remained a constant in her narrative, not as a rival, but as a compass. Even now, Coco admitted in an article for the Players' Tribune, "When I'm unsure of something, on or off the court, I think about how Venus or Serena would have handled it. Venus especially, she did things when no one else thought they could be done, and she did them with dignity." The weight of legacy. In the tennis world, facing an idol isn't like facing any other opponent. There's a different gravity. Every point becomes a story. Every rally is loaded with unspoken dialogue. People always ask me if it's harder to play your idol or a rival. Coco laughed in an interview with Tennis Channel. "I tell them, your idol is your rival the moment you share a court, but the respect never leaves." When asked what might run through her mind if she were ever to play Venus again, Coco's response was intimate, almost poetic. "I think I'd hear echoes of my younger self screaming at the TV when Venus won her 5th Wimbledon, of my dad reminding me, 'They paved the way so you could walk through the gates.' I'd hear all of it, while trying not to double fault." She laughed. "But you can't let admiration turn into hesitation. You owe it to your heroes to play your best against them." The imagined rematch. In this imagined future match, perhaps at the U.S. Open under the lights, Venus, older now, yet still possessing that same fierce gaze, would walk onto the court not just as a competitor, but as a symbol. Coco would feel it instantly. The crowd wouldn't know who to cheer louder for, the legend or the legacy. "People always assume you want to defeat your idols," Coco said. "But the truth is, you just want to honor them. You want to show that everything they did meant something, that it created something." In this rematch, Coco wouldn't just play for herself. She'd play for every little girl watching from home. She'd play for her 15-year-old self, who once dared to believe. And she'd play for Venus, the warrior queen who made it all possible. Sisterhood beyond the score. There is a special language between black women in tennis, a shared understanding of the struggle, the isolation, the spotlight that often feels more blinding than warm. Venus had once said in an interview, "When Serena and I walked onto those courts in the 90s, we weren't just playing tennis. We were playing history." Now Coco knew what that felt like too. "There's a sisterhood, even if we don't talk every day," she said. "We've all had to fight battles people never see. Venus fought hers, so I could fight different ones." Would she cry again? "If I had to play Venus again, would I cry?" A reporter asked during a press conference. Coco smiled. "Probably, but not before the match. Maybe not even right after. Maybe later that night, when I'm alone. Because I'd realize, win or lose, I got to be part of something bigger than sport." She paused. "It's not just about beating your heroes. It's about being able to stand on the same court as them and say, 'Thank you. I'm here because you were.' A match that transcends time. In that hypothetical match, perhaps Venus would hold serve with effortless grace, the way she always did. Maybe Coco would chase down every ball like her life depended on it. There'd be flashes of brilliance from both sides. Power, precision, poise. A 40-year-old icon versus the reigning champion of a new era. But by the end, when they'd walk to the net and shake hands, or maybe even embrace, there'd be no loser. Just two women from different chapters of the same book, meeting in a paragraph neither had expected to write. Closing thoughts from Coco. "If I never play Venus again," Coco said in a podcast months later, I'll still carry that first match, and everything she stands for, with me forever. But if I do get to play her again, I'll walk onto that court smiling, because that would mean she's still out here, still defying time, still being Venus. She leaned closer to the mic. And if I win, I'll celebrate like any athlete would. But deep down, I'll know I owe part of that win to her. Epilogue, a note on mentorship and memory. Years later, maybe Coco Gauff will have her own academy, her own protégés. Maybe some young girl from Atlanta or Nairobi or Tokyo will say, I started playing because of Coco.